Hey, it's Shannon with Stack of Stones, and today we are going to talk a bit more about burnout. Okay, so burnout is a word and a concept that's used a lot now, right? So levels of burnout are increasing in all kinds of different roles, very specifically in guardian roles, though. So again, as a review, here at Stack of Stones, we're all about taking good care of guardians, and that we use that word guardian to wrap in anyone whose job is to help others in distress. So anyone from nurses to social workers, first responders, to if you're out there advocating for the homeless, anything where your job is really dealing with people who are suffering. Those jobs have very specific challenges to them, and we are seeing increasing levels of burnout within those roles. What I want to do specifically in this training is formalize that definition a bit. So get more specific around what burnout is so that you're able to identify if you're kind of feeling it a little bit. I'm going to throw out a caution here. I don't want you to kind of listen to the criteria and think, yes, I'm burned out, and then take big steps and go change your career or something like that. Instead, I'm just trying to normalize and help you understand your experience. And then secondly, we're going to talk briefly about what to do to manage burnout, because it's a real thing. It's something that we need to be considering as we do our guardian roles. Okay. So first, let's talk about the definition. The World Health Organization in mid-2019 actually formalized the definition within the ICD-11, which is fantastic because it makes it something that we can talk about a bit more formally. And one of the things they did that I really appreciate is ICD means the International Classification of Diseases, right? But they were careful in the definition to point out that burnout is not a disease. So this is not a disorder. They refer to it as an organizational phenomenon. So burnout is something that is happening from whatever circumstances or organization is surrounding you. You still have some personal responsibility within managing the role, right? If you have a really, really hard job and you don't take good care of yourself, you can't say the burnout is everyone else's fault. We have personal responsibility, but it's also balanced with the stressors around us within our organizations. So I appreciate that they call that out. They also list three key criteria that can kind of be used to identify whether or not burnout is something that's happening. And the first one is just feelings of energy depletion or exhaustion. Okay. And so this is not something that can be explained. So this isn't exhaustion that comes from working a bunch of overtime last month or getting really poor rest. This is just a general, consistent feeling of being really, really exhausted and depleted that stays that way over time. Okay. And then secondly, they list out that the criteria is increased mental distance from one's job or feelings of negativism or cynicism related to one's job. Okay, so this feeling that the role that you signed up for it's not working the way it used to. And let me read the third criteria because I want to talk about these two together. The third criteria is reduced professional efficacy. So efficacy means that you believe you have the ability to produce the desired result. Okay, so I'm a therapist, that's one of my roles. So my professional efficacy means that if someone comes in and does a session with me, I think I can help. So the last two criteria, what I want to point out is that one is personal. So if you are feeling like you as an individual within your role can't do the work that you used to be able to do, you're just feeling like you're not as good, or maybe you're getting worried that if a certain patient or scene or something like that comes up, you're just not able to handle it, then that's a sign of burnout. Secondly, if you're just becoming increasingly cynical overall about the role, that's something to think about. So let's use the example of law enforcement. Let's say that you became an officer because you wanted to take good care of your community, right? You wanted to protect the citizens around you. You wanted to find the bad guys, find justice, stuff like that. And now you just feel like you don't even stand a chance at doing that. Maybe you're feeling like the role is nothing more than like chasing homeless camps around the city or something like that. That's a signal that you're getting increasingly cynical about the role. Okay, so those two can overlap, but I kind of wanted to lay out how they're different. Okay, so that's the definition from the World Health Organization. So I hold out those criteria as something for you to consider. Maybe if you've been feeling really exhausted and depleted, this is a good way for you to wonder whether this is burnout that you're feeling. But I do want to caution you away from thinking, oh my gosh, I just checked all three boxes. Now it's time for me to quit and become an accountant. Don't take this too seriously. Don't make any rash decisions. What we want to do is we want to just establish, okay, I am pretty depleted and I need to take some steps to fix it. In addition to those three criteria, I wanted to offer out another word for burnout. So I first encountered the word rust out in a book called On Being a Therapist. And for me, that term rust out really fit a lot better because a burn is fast, right? And your experience may be fast. You may have gone from doing fine to not doing fine fairly quickly. But for a lot of people, it's actually really slow. It's more that slow drip of water that causes the metal to begin to rust and kind of erodes that foundational strength. So I want to offer that word out because if it fits better, just know that that's pretty common. And when we're assessing what it is that's leading to our feelings of burnout or rust out, sometimes it's helpful to remember that it may not be anything big or particularly noticeable. It may just be those slow drips over time. Okay. Okay, so we talked about the criteria, and then I gave you a different word. One of the next things I want to talk about a little bit is what can contribute to burnout. And I would love if you're feeling that sense of depletion, take a moment to really jot down some thoughts about what may be contributing to that feeling. Okay? Specifically, think about the work. So sometimes it's the work that's wearing us down. Again, if you're a guardian, then you're seeing grief and pain and fear and anger and screaming, blood, right? There may be all these other things you're seeing on a daily basis over and over again, and that may be really wearing you down. Sometimes the work is really hard, but our organization kind of counterbalances that for us. So if you work in an organization that is really supportive, so they have supports in place for your mental health and your wellness, you work with a tight-knit team where everyone gets along well and takes really good care of each other. Maybe you have access to, your insurance provides good access to therapy. There's good policies in place for mental health days, and so you can take some time off and kind of regroup. If your organization's good, it can kind of counterbalance some of the work. Sometimes our organizations are not helpful. So not only is the work hard, but the organization is hard. And so that combination is what can be leading us to a sense of burnout. Sometimes we may not be burnt out by the work at all. You may be really energized and enjoying the work, but it's actually maybe the politics or the bureaucracy or the paperwork or whatever it is within your organization that's exhausting you. And then sometimes that's also a combination with our personal lives, right? So if the work is starting to wear you down and your organization is not that great, and then you go home and fight with your spouse every night, all of those can combine to bring you down. Okay, so just take a moment and jot down what's going on. Again, the goal is not to panic and freak out and look at a bunch of bullet points and decide you need to make a big change. Maybe you do need to make a change in your career, but don't be rash. Be careful. What I want you to do is I want you to kind of look through the different criteria and start to figure out where to help those things step by step. Okay? Which brings me to the last point, which is what do we do about burnout? And honestly, I'm not going to go into this too much within this training because what we do about burnout is everything we talk about in the resilience routine videos. So if you haven't watched those, go back and watch. And specifically, when in those videos, when we talk about the idea of congruence and the need to kind of counterbalance the different things that we experience, that plays a huge role in managing this sense of rust out or burnout. Okay. So what I would love for you to walk away with is knowing that burnout is real, specific, right? World Health Organization says it is true. The word rust out may fit a little bit better. It's important to figure out what exactly is leading to those feelings of depletion for you. Actually, let me rephrase that. I'm sorry. Not what exactly is, because you may not exactly know, but take a stab at figuring it out. And then you need to take steps to counterbalance it. So burnout is not the kind of thing that just goes away or just gets better over time, okay? You're going to need to really retool your resilience routines and think about what's going on and how you take good care of yourself, okay? Thank you for everything you do.